Working in an American restaurant is like being on the front lines of a war where the enemy is armed with a Yelp account and zero common sense. Forget cold food. We are talking about people getting offended by a waiter's shadow or the specific speed of a blink. Today, we are exposing 55 of the most ridiculous, brain-melting complaints ever filed against staff. These stories are so absurd, they will make you want to tip your next server double just for surviving the day. 1. A diner in Beverly Hills once filed a grievance because his waiter was wearing a pair of expensive designer sneakers. The argument was that seeing a service worker in $300 shoes was a slap in the face to his own status as a wealthy patron. He felt that the staff should look poor enough to make the guests feel superior by comparison. This level of classism is truly sickening, showing how some people use dining out as a way to feed their own fragile egos rather than their stomachs. 2. A customer at a California patio once filed a formal complaint because the waiter's shadow touched her bread roll. As the sun set, the server's silhouette fell across the table, causing the woman to claim the darkness contaminated her food with negative energy. She demanded fresh bread and insisted the waiter approach only from angles that kept his shadow far from her plate. It is truly remarkable that someone can be offended by the literal absence of light. Do you think this person actually believes in shadow germs, or are they just using insanity to hunt for a free meal? 3. Rules about pets in restaurants often lead to drama, but one woman in Florida took it to the extreme by complaining that the waiter didn't offer her dog a chair. When the server explained that health codes prohibit animals from sitting at the table, he was accused of species-based discrimination. The owner insisted her poodle was a refined soul who deserved a seat and a water bowl made of fine china. It is a brave new world when people expect their pets to have better accommodations than the human guests. 4. In a luxury steakhouse in Chicago, a guest complained that the forks were too heavy and caused him physical fatigue during his meal. Having to lift such substantial silver was apparently a form of manual labor he hadn't signed up for when making a reservation. The manager was asked for a set of lightweight plastic utensils usually reserved for takeout orders, just so the man could finish his steak without a gym workout. It is amazing how the very signs of quality can be turned into a reason for a tantrum. 5. A customer in Miami filed a complaint because her server was, quote, too fit. She claimed that seeing the waiter's muscular arms made her feel guilty about ordering dessert, which she labeled as targeted body shaming. She insisted the restaurant should implement a dress code where fit employees wear long sleeves to avoid making diners feel insecure about their calorie intake. It takes a special kind of ego to blame your own dietary guilt on someone else's gym routine. 6. Birthdays are supposed to be fun, but for one diner, the staff singing was a bridge too far. They filed a complaint stating that the happy birthday song was performed in a key that was, quote, offensively off-pitch and ruined the resonance of their lobster bisque. They did not even care about the noise level. They were just mad that the servers were not professional-grade opera singers. Have you ever been so annoyed by a harmless restaurant tradition that you felt the need to write a formal letter about it? Or are you a normal person? 7. Personal lives can apparently ruin a meal too, as seen when a guest in Salt Lake City filed a complaint after seeing their server's wedding ring. This customer, who was on a first date, felt that seeing a happily married man made his own single status feel more depressing and ruined the romantic atmosphere. The demand was that staff should be required to hide all signs of their personal happiness or relationships to avoid triggering the insecurities of the patrons. It takes a massive amount of narcissism to make someone else's marriage about your own bad date. 8. A man in Dallas once called the police because the restaurant ran out of ranch dressing. He claimed that since the menu mentioned ranch, the lack of it constituted a breach of contract and false advertising. He sat in his booth and refused to leave until an officer arrived to file a report against the kitchen staff for, quote, criminal negligence. He actually expected the cops to handcuff the chef over a side of dipping sauce. Is this a crime or just a massive midlife crisis? 9. Authenticity is usually a selling point, but not for the tourist who visited a French bakery in New York. They complained to corporate that the staff had French accents that sounded, quote, too much like they were trying to be French. The customer was convinced the employees were faking their heritage just to make the croissant seem more expensive. Even after a waiter offered to show his actual passport, the customer insisted it was a high-level theatrical performance designed to trick them. Do you think people actually enjoy being outraged? Or is it just a hobby for the bored? 10. In the world of fine dining, a waiter should be seen and not heard, but one guest took that rule to a very weird place. They complained that their server was, quote, too stealthy and kept startling them by appearing out of thin air to refill glasses. Every time the waiter dropped off a dish, the customer would jump in their seat like they were in a horror movie. They eventually asked the manager if the server could wear bells on their shoes so they would have a fair warning before being approached. It is a tough job when being a ninja at service is actually a strike against you. 11. A couple in Atlanta was having a heated argument over their anniversary dinner, and things took a turn for the bizarre when the wife demanded the waiter pick a side. When the server tried to remain neutral and just offer more breadsticks, the woman filed a formal complaint. She claimed the waiter's refusal to agree with her was a sign of, quote, blatant misogyny and ruined her night. It is hard enough carrying a heavy tray, but being expected to act as a witness in a domestic dispute is way above any server's pay grade. 12. There is no such thing as a free lunch, but some think a free dessert should come with a red carpet. A woman in Nashville was given a complimentary cake for her birthday, but she sent it back and demanded a manager. Her complaint: the server didn't present the cake with enough, quote, theatrical enthusiasm. She felt the staff's singing lacked genuine joy and insisted they do it again with more soul because she didn't feel like the center of the universe for those 30 seconds. 13. Coincidences can be awkward, but one diner in Michigan took it to a legal level after discovering her waiter had the same name as her ex-husband. A complaint was filed stating that every time the server introduced himself as Dave, it triggered a wave of emotional distress and ruined the flavor of her salmon. The restaurant was expected to provide a massive discount for the psychological trauma caused by a common four-letter name. Does a waiter's name actually affect your appetite? Or is this just a masterclass in looking for a reason to be miserable? 14. Identity politics reached a new peak in a Seattle bistro when a diner complained about a waiter's name tag. The server's name was unusual, and the customer claimed that having to struggle with the pronunciation was an unnecessary mental burden. She told the manager that the restaurant should assign, quote, easy English stage names to all staff members to ensure a frictionless experience. Imagine being so entitled that you expect another human to change their birth name just so you can order a latte. 15. A diner in Seattle became enraged because the waiter's subtle cologne was clashing with the aroma of his truffle pasta. The argument was that the kitchen's olfactory profile was being sabotaged by the server's personal hygiene choices, leading to a demand that the waiter go home and shower mid-shift. When the manager pointed out that the scent was barely noticeable, the man claimed he had the nose of a bloodhound and was being subjected to chemical warfare. How sensitive is too sensitive when it comes to the smells of a busy restaurant? 16. Some parents think the restaurant staff doubles as a babysitting service. A family in Phoenix was outraged when a waiter asked their toddler to stop throwing salt shakers at other tables. The parents filed a complaint saying the waiter had no right to, quote, parent their child, and that his tone was judgmental. They argued that since they were paying customers, their kid should have the creative freedom to use the dining room as a playground, and the staff should just deal with the mess. 17. Ageism works both ways, as seen in a high-end wine bar where a customer complained that the sommelier was too young to understand the complexity of vintage grapes. The guest refused to listen to any recommendations, claiming that a 20-something couldn't possibly possess the life experience needed to appreciate a full-bodied Cabernet. Even after the server proved their master-level certification, the customer insisted on speaking to someone with more wrinkles and gray hair. It seems some people value the age of the person pouring the wine more than the quality of the wine itself. 18. Sometimes the food is great, but the quote, energy is just off. A diner in San Francisco asked for a 50% discount because the restaurant's playlist didn't match the mood of her kale salad. She complained to the staff that the upbeat pop music was clashing with her spiritual aura and making her digestion difficult. She insisted that the waiter should have noticed her Zen state and adjusted the entire building's audio levels. It takes a lot of nerve to expect a public space to sync with your vibe. 19. Privacy is a big deal, but this is next level. A customer in Denver complained that a waiter, quote, looked at her phone while clearing the table. The server was actually just reaching for a dirty plate near the device, but the woman insisted he was trying to read her private text messages. She demanded the waiter be fired for corporate espionage and claimed she felt violated by his proximity to her screen. It is getting to the point where servers might need blindfolds just to avoid being accused of snooping. 20. A health guru in Los Angeles went on a tirade because her organic salad looked, quote, too perfect. She accused the restaurant of lying about their ingredients, arguing that real organic vegetables should have bug holes and dirt on them to prove they were natural. She filed a complaint against the kitchen staff for washing the lettuce too thoroughly, claiming they were stripping away the soul of the earth. How far is too far when it comes to being a picky eater? Is there any way for a restaurant to win? 21. A self-proclaimed influencer in Los Angeles once demanded her entire meal for free because the waiter didn't recognize her from her TikTok channel. Instead of paying, this person filed a formal complaint, claiming the server was professionally negligent for not knowing her dietary preferences beforehand. The argument was that 5,000 followers made her a local celebrity, and the waiter's failure to treat her like royalty was a personal insult to her brand. If you had a few followers, would you expect free steak, or do you still live in reality? 22. A woman in Miami actually wrote a letter to corporate complaining that their hostess was distractingly attractive. Apparently, the employee's beauty was a calculated move by the restaurant to make female customers feel insecure and ruin their appetite. The demand was simple: hire only average-looking people to maintain a safe dining environment for married couples. It is truly peak insecurity when someone wants you fired just because you have good genes and a nice skincare routine. 23. In a quiet bistro in Vermont, a diner complained that her waiter was breathing too loudly while taking her order. This sound was supposedly distracting her from the ambient jazz music and making her feel claustrophobic. To fix the situation, the customer insisted the waiter practice shallow breathing or step at least 6 feet away every time he needed to inhale. Imagine being so bothered by the basic biological functions of another human being that you try to get them disciplined for staying alive. 24. In a trendy Manhattan cafe, a customer complained that the waiter's glasses were too academic and made her feel like she was being judged during her meal. Those thick frames allegedly gave the server a scholarly aura that felt condescending when she ordered a second dessert. The request was for the waiter to either remove the glasses or be replaced by someone with a more approachable and less intelligent look. It is truly mind-blowing that someone's choice of eyewear can be interpreted as a personal attack on your lifestyle. 25. You would think a waiter who knows the menu is a good thing, but one customer in DC complained that his server was showing off. When the waiter explained the origin of the wine and the specific farm where the beef was sourced, the diner labeled it an act of intellectual elitism. A formal complaint followed, stating that the waiter was trying to make the guest feel uneducated. The solution? A demand for a different server who would just shut up and bring the food. 26. A woman in San Diego complained because the sun was too bright during her brunch. Rather than closing the blinds, she wanted the waiter to somehow fix the glare coming off the building across the street. When the server explained he didn't control the laws of physics or urban architecture, he was accused of having a bad attitude and being unhelpful. This person actually expected the staff to go outside and hold a giant umbrella over the sidewalk just so she could see her mimosa better. 27. A diner in Kentucky was so offended by a waiter's small tattoo of a butterfly that they claimed it gave them visual indigestion. The argument was that the sight of ink on skin was unsanitary, and that the restaurant was failing to maintain a professional standard of purity. Consequently, they insisted that the waiter be moved to the kitchen where no one could see his scarred flesh. It is wild how some people can look at a tiny drawing and act like they've just witnessed a crime scene. 28. A customer in Ohio filed a complaint after burning their tongue on a bowl of French onion soup that was literally bubbling in front of them. The logic here was that the waiter didn't say the word hot loud enough to register as a formal warning. Even though steam was rising and the bowl was sizzling, this person claimed the server was legally responsible for their burnt taste buds. If a bowl is literally boiling, do you really need a verbal disclaimer, or is common sense just dead? 29. In a bizarre twist of entitlement, a diner in Chicago complained because her waiter was left-handed. The way he placed her plate on the table felt backwards and sinister, which allegedly disrupted the positive energy of her meal. This led to an argument that left-handed service was a sign of a low-class establishment and a demand that all future courses be served by someone right-handed and normal. We are really out here living in the Middle Ages with some of these ridiculous superstitions. 30. A man in New Jersey lost his mind because the busboy cleared his empty plate while he was still talking. Instead of enjoying the extra space, he wanted the visual representation of his meal to remain in front of him until he decided the experience was over. A complaint for theft of property followed, with the man arguing that the plate was his for the duration of his stay. He actually expected the manager to find his dirty plate in the dishwasher and bring it back to the table. 31. A customer in Arizona filed a formal grievance because the ceiling fan was spinning at a speed that ruined the texture of her soup. The air movement was supposedly creating tiny ripples on the surface of the broth, which made the liquid taste more aerated and less authentic. This woman demanded the manager turn off the entire HVAC system for the building during her meal. When told that other guests would overheat, she argued that her culinary experience should take priority over everyone else's body temperature. 32. Technology is great until it asks you to do basic addition. A customer in Boston left a scathing review because the suggested tip percentages on his receipt felt like, quote, math bullying. He argued that by showing what 15 and 20% would be, the restaurant was shaming him for being bad at fractions. He claimed the server was trying to humiliate him in front of his date by making the math too easy to ignore. Have you ever felt personally attacked by a receipt? 33. A man in Houston became convinced that the staff was using smaller ice cubes to cheat him out of his soda. 10 minutes were spent measuring the displacement of water in his glass before he complained that the waiter was part of a corporate conspiracy to save money on syrup. He even demanded the manager bring out a scale to weigh the liquid versus the ice to prove he was being robbed of 3 cents worth of Coke. Do you think some people are naturally suspicious, or is it just a hobby for the terminally bored? 34. Digital delusions are becoming a real headache for staff, like the teenager in Nashville who threw a tantrum because the restaurant didn't have a secret menu item she saw on a fake TikTok video. When the server explained that the glitter-topped unicorn steak didn't exist, the girl filed a complaint for false advertising and ruining her content. She insisted the chef was just being lazy and demanded they go to a grocery store to buy the ingredients for her viral moment. Do you think restaurants should be forced to keep up with internet trends, or should people stop believing everything they see on a screen? 35. Height shouldn't be a factor in service, but a diner in Colorado complained that her waitress was too tall. This vertical advantage was supposedly a subtle form of intimidation that made the table feel smaller than it actually was. The customer requested a shorter server for the rest of the night, arguing that looking up to order her salad gave her a neck strain and an inferiority complex. It is a tough day at work when being tall is considered a violation of the customer's personal comfort zone. 36. A man in Las Vegas once complained about the aggressive way a waiter poured his sparkling water. Apparently, the sound of the bubbles hitting the glass was too violent and disrupted the meditative state he was trying to achieve before his appetizers arrived. The server was accused of having a hidden anger issue, and the man demanded a formal apology for the auditory assault. The level of sensitivity required to be traumatized by a glass of Perrier is honestly impressive. 37. Some people treat restaurants like a fashion runway, including a woman in New York who complained that the cloth napkins clashed with her expensive dress. She demanded the manager find a different color of linen because the red fabric was washing out her complexion in her Instagram photos. When told the only options were white or red, she claimed the restaurant was being uncooperative and ruining her aesthetic brand. Some diners truly believe the entire world is just a backdrop for their social media feed. 38. One customer in Oregon felt deprived when a waiter didn't laugh at his offensive joke. A formal complaint followed, stating the server had a defective personality and was intentionally making the table feel awkward by maintaining a professional demeanor. The man argued that as a paying guest, he was entitled to a standing ovation or at least a polite chuckle for his humor. Is a waiter's job to serve food, or are they also required to be your personal audience for bad comedy? 39. Efficiency is usually a good thing, unless you're the guy who complained that his waiter was, quote, suspiciously fast? He felt that because the server refilled his water before he even realized it was low, the staff was monitoring his every move. He called it an invasion of privacy and claimed he felt profiled by the waiter's anticipation of his needs. It is a strange world when being elite at your job gets you a 1-star review for being a creep. Does a server being too attentive make you feel pampered, or does it feel like you are being watched by the Secret Service? 40. Status is everything for some people, even when it comes to where they sit. A woman in Vegas demanded a manager because a celebrity was seated at a better table than her. She argued that because she had been a loyal customer for 3 years, she deserved the, quote, power booth more than some movie star. When the manager explained the table was reserved months in advance, she claimed the restaurant was practicing social hierarchy discrimination. Some people really believe a rewards card equals fame. 41. Imagine being so miserable that someone else's joy feels like a personal attack. A diner in Ohio actually filed a formal complaint because their server was, quote, too happy. They claimed the waiter's constant smiling was a sarcastic mockery of their own bad mood and demanded the manager tell him to tone down the optimism. Apparently, they wanted their steak served with a side of existential dread rather than a friendly face. It makes you wonder if some people go out to eat just hoping to find something to be mad about. 42. A man in Florida once lost his mind over the way a napkin was folded on his table. It was not that the cloth was dirty, but rather that the triangular fold looked, quote, too sharp and intimidating. He claimed the pointed edge of the fabric felt like a passive-aggressive threat from the busboy and refused to sit down until it was gone. He insisted the manager bring him a fresh napkin crumpled into a messy ball because it felt more organic and less confrontational to his personal space. Some people really do have way too much free time. 43. A woman in San Francisco insisted on a full refund because she felt the waiter's aura was too dark and was curdling the milk in her coffee. There was no problem with the service or the food, but the claim was that the server's personal energy was vibrating at a frequency that made her kale salad taste like sadness. This customer actually asked for a server who practiced daily meditation and could guarantee a more luminous presence at the table. Do you think people who talk about auras are just looking for a mystical way to be a jerk to service staff? 44. Some people are truly threatened by a dictionary, like the customer in Philadelphia who complained that the waiter was using words that were too big. Simple descriptions of the evening specials were interpreted as a smug display of vocabulary intended to make the table feel intellectually inferior. The guest demanded that the manager tell the staff to speak in more basic terms so they wouldn't feel like they were back in a high school English class. It is a strange time when being articulate is considered a fireable offense. 45. We have all heard of people complaining about cold food, but how about cold ice? A lady at a Chicago bistro sent her drink back because the ice cubes were, quote, excessively freezing. She argued that the extreme temperature was numbing her tongue and preventing her from experiencing the flavor profile of her diet soda. The manager had to explain that ice is, by definition, frozen water, but she was not having it. She actually asked if they could microwave the ice for 10 seconds just to take the cold edge off. 46. In a high-end New York eatery, a man complained that his waiter was, quote, refilling his glass too often. He claimed that every time the water level was topped off, it interrupted the flow of his conversation and felt like a subtle hint that he should hurry up and leave. He actually demanded the waiter ask for permission before touching any glassware on the table. Does a proactive server make you feel like a VIP, or do you find frequent table visits annoying and intrusive? 47. Presentation is an art, but some customers take it way too literally. A man at a burger joint sent his meal back because the swirl of sauce on his plate was an oval instead of a perfect circle. He actually pulled out a protractor and proved to the server that the sauce was aesthetically unbalanced and leaned 3 degrees to the left. He claimed that the lack of geometric precision made the entire meal feel rushed. The chef reportedly spent 5 minutes with a stencil just to make sure the next plate met the man's mathematical standards. 48. A woman in Maine complained that her waiter was too quiet, which she found suspicious and unsettling. Because she couldn't hear the server's footsteps, she became convinced he was clearly trying to eavesdrop on her private conversation about an inheritance. She demanded that the waiter wear louder shoes or announce his presence with a loud clearing of the throat every time he approached within 10 feet of the table. It seems like servers just can't win. They are either too loud and intrusive or too quiet and sneaky. 49. Forget the food. Sometimes it's the porcelain that causes the drama. A diner in Ohio sent back a perfectly cooked steak because the plate was too warm to the touch. His logic was that the heat from the dish was an unnecessary safety hazard and that he shouldn't be expected to exercise caution while dining in a professional establishment. The kitchen was told to cool the plate down to room temperature before replating the meat, completely ignoring the fact that his food would be ice cold by the time it returned to the table. 50. A businessman in New York complained that the waiter was making too much eye contact, which he interpreted as a direct challenge to his authority. He told the manager that the server's steady gaze was a sign of hidden aggression and that he felt like he was in a staring contest instead of a business lunch. The request was for a server who would keep their eyes on the floor and only speak when spoken to, like a character from a Victorian novel. Why do some people feel so threatened by a simple, friendly gaze from another human being? 51. A diner in Oregon filed a complaint because their waiter blinked an unnatural amount of times during the ordering process. The customer became convinced the server was sending a coded message in Morse code to other staff members about the table's private conversation. Instead of just ordering a burger, they demanded a manager and a security sweep of the building to ensure their secrets were safe. It is hard to provide good service when your basic eye reflexes are being interpreted as a high-stakes spy thriller. 52. In a high-end restaurant in Dallas, a customer lost their temper because the waiter wasn't standing perfectly parallel to the table legs. This misalignment supposedly ruined the visual harmony of the room and caused the guest to feel a sense of spatial nausea. The demand was for the staff to be trained in professional posture and to use floor markers to ensure they always stood at a 90-degree angle to the patrons. Does the angle of a server's body actually affect your appetite, or are some people just born to be architectural critics? 53. A woman in Virginia once complained that the waiter's handwriting on the bill was too sharp and pointy. According to her, those jagged letters indicated a hidden violent streak and made her feel unsafe paying the tab. The customer insisted the manager rewrite the entire bill in a rounder, friendlier font to prove the restaurant wasn't harboring a secret psychopath in the kitchen. Imagine being so terrified of a handwritten number 7 that you feel the need to call for a corporate intervention. 54. An outdoor diner in Florida became enraged when a leaf fell from a tree and landed on the empty chair next to him. He didn't blame the wind. He blamed the waiter for not anticipating the trajectory of the leaf and catching it before it reached the table area. The formal complaint stated that the server's lack of reflexes showed a complete disregard for the cleanliness of the dining environment. Do you think waiters should be equipped with butterfly nets for falling leaves, or is it time for this guy to just eat indoors? 55. A man in a mirrored restaurant in Las Vegas complained because he could see his waiter's reflection while eating his steak. This visual duplication was described as a gross invasion of his dining intimacy that made him feel like he was being served by a ghost. He demanded the restaurant cover the expensive mirrors with black cloth, or move his table to a dark corner where the laws of physics didn't apply. This is the ultimate peak of restaurant absurdity, being offended by the literal existence of a reflection while trying to enjoy a baked potato. We just survived 55 stories of pure restaurant madness where common sense went to die. From shadow germs to being offended by a waiter's fitness, these staff members deserve a medal for not quitting on the spot. But let's flip the script. What is that one specific thing a waiter does that instantly ruins your mood? Is it the awkward, "Is everything okay?" check-in while your mouth is full of food, or when they vanish the moment you need the check? Let us know your biggest restaurant pet peeves in the comments below. Smash that like button, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.